Hey, sports fans, or not sports fans. I don't really care if you like sports or not. If you live in San Diego or if you have any interest in the history of what happened to San Diego via the Spanos family, this next commentary is for you. My name is David Agranoff, and I was a fan leader in the Save Our Bolts movement that fought to keep the Chargers in San Diego. This video is going to be all about why people should not root for the Chargers, why they should never support any business run by the Spanos family. Spanos family, if you don't know, are the owner of the Chargers. We're going to assume that you have some fundamental knowledge of what happened with the Chargers, but we're going to go into intense detail that I have from firsthand knowledge since I was right there. But before we get into that, one last thing. This is just our opinions. Very well-informed opinions because we were right in the thick of it. But they are just opinions. And here's the other thing. This is going to be long. This is not a short commentary. This is probably going to be 45 minutes to an hour. So bookmark this. Come back to it when you have time. If you have little ones in the car with you, do not play this because there is going to be all kinds of offensive language. Considering we're talking about the Spanos family and what's more offensive than them. So, let's start with our background as Charger fans. With me today is my buddy Larry, who I watched all Charger games with. Larry, tell him your background as a Charger fan.
All right, well, I'm a native San Diegan, and
Rare native San Diegan.
A what?
A rare native.
Oh, rare. Yeah, we're hunted in the wild. My first experience with the Chargers was when I was 7 years old, and that would be 1979, 1980, somewhere in there.
So you've been a fan a long time.
And the Eric Coryell days, and I fell in love with football when I watched Dan Fouts throw to all those great receivers he had.
Mm-hmm.
And Chuck Muncie on cocaine and Stickum, all that stuff from back in the late 70s, early
Kellen
80s.
Winslow getting an IV to go back in at the Epic in Miami.
Oh, that's where I became a diehard fan, was that game right there.
So you were with the Chargers through the thick and the thin, through
the very thin in the late 80s.
Yeah, in the Ryan Leaf era, the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh.
So you have a lot of experience being emotionally tied to a Dean Spanos product.
Yeah.
And Alex Spanos product, for that matter.
Yeah. Well, I was a fan of the team before the Spanos family, but, I didn't know anything about owners when I was a little kid.
Right.
So, and the damage they can do.
Right. Me personally, I did not grow up in San Diego. I didn't even like sports when I was growing up, really. And in 2002, I moved to San Diego, and I hadn't watched football since I was a little kid, and somebody told me that there was this guy, LT, who was playing for our local team, and he was really, really good, and I wanted to check him out. And, oh my God, that LT guy was amazing. And the next thing you know, I just, another week I wanted to see what LT was doing, and pretty soon I was hooked. And I continued to be a Charger fan, even though we moved to the Pacific Northwest to Portland, Oregon. And that's where I got real serious about being a Charger fan, because I found a Charger bar, this place called Claudia's in Portland, that was...
Shout out to Claudia's.
Right, which is where...
the Claudia's crew.
And that's where Larry and I actually became friends and met, because we were... I was watching... the Chargers played the Jaguars and we kicked the shit out of them that day. And there was only one open seat left in Claudia's, and Larry asked to sit down next to me. And that was, 8 years ago? Something like that?
That was somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, more than that.
I had actually looked up at a Charger bar when I was living in Portland, and the only place that showed Charger games was Claudia's.
So think about that. This is really important because we're best friends. We have worked together as writers. We've written screenplays together. We do podcasts. We do all kinds of things together. And we met because of the Chargers and the community of the Chargers.
And us being fans, yeah.
Yeah, and for years, the two of us did not miss seeing Charger games together as long as, we both moved back to San Diego around the same time and started going to watch games at True North. It wasn't quite the same kind of expat community that we had in Portland, but
right.
But we definitely were diehard Charger fans. We hurt when they lost, and so we hurt a lot.
And they lost some big games.
Yeah, and when they had big, awesome comeback wins, like the last one in San Francisco that we had with Phillip Rivers.
That was a great game.
Yeah, we were right there with them, and we really loved and cared about the Chargers. We love Phillip Rivers. We bled blue and gold. So I want everyone to know, if you're going to try to pull some shit saying that we weren't true fans, no, you're not going to be able to pull that shit. We'll talk about fandom later, but first we're going to talk about the Spanos family.
Boo.
Okay, so the team in San Diego was a tradition long before the Spanos family bought the team. I'm not even sure what year it was. It was sometime in the 80s.
Yeah, I think it was 84.
Yeah. So the Eric Coryell days in the late 70s and the awesome Epic in Miami game, the AFL championship, all those things happened after Barron Hilton moved the team from the one stinking year in LA down to San Diego. So the team had 56 years of tradition, many of which were formed before the Spanos family bought the team, when Alex Spanos, who was a slumlord in Stockton, California, bought the Chargers. And one thing that's interesting to note is that Jerry Jones tried to buy the Chargers one time before he was able to buy the Cowboys. Boy, wouldn't life be different if Jerry Jones was our owner and not...
I don't know if it would be better. It would definitely be different.
It'd be different.
And we would probably still have a team.
Yeah, we'd probably still have a team because he'd probably have kept the team here and be able to build his own frickin' stadium.
Right.
So, but the team had, this history long before them, so it's important to remember that they didn't found the team. They just bought it. And they had no ties to San Diego before they bought the team. So, yes, some of the Spanos children have lived here their whole lives, but Dean Spanos is a Stockton kid. He was, the son of a Stockton slumlord who made all of his money up in Stockton, California, and had no ties to this city. It's very
That would be,
important.
of course, beautiful Stockton, California.
Yeah. Love you, Stockton. Anyways, but since they took over the team, they've had historically bad management. In all the years that the Spanos family has owned the team, they've only made it to the Super Bowl one time.
Once.
One time.
And what happened in that game? We got blown the fuck out.
Yeah, they got fucking destroyed by Steve Young and the 49ers. And here's the thing, making the Super Bowl...
Can I say something about that game?
Sure, say something.
All right. So, I was living in Portland when that Super Bowl happened. And I made a bet with my friend and my roommate up there that we would do a shot every time the Chargers scored and chug a beer every time San Francisco scored.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so by the third quarter, my friend had already passed out. I barely made it to the end of that game.
Okay, that's an interesting story. So, the historically bad management under the Spanos family, we had very few winning seasons under the Spanos family, the majority of which was during the LT era, was the majority of our winning years. We had a few years under Bobby Ross where the team did all right and made it to the Super Bowl, but for the most part, most of those years have been really bad. Even when they first took over, they still had Dan Fouts, but they kind of kicked Dan.
They blew that. They blew anything they had.
Yeah, and they kicked Dan Fouts to the curb. So the fact that Dan Fouts has any loyalty to the Spanos family is unimaginable to me. I know he's not super happy with the choice to leave San Diego, but
no, he was pretty vocal about that.
Yeah,
for a time.
Yeah. Now he still does the broadcast for the team and all that, but whatever, during the preseason. So that we've had this historically bad management. This is really important to note. But it's also important to note that they took $110 million in corporate welfare in the last years, like basically since the turn of the century here into the 21st century.
That shit's insane.
$110 million in corporate welfare between the ticket guarantee, between renovations to the stadium that they insisted they needed to have in order to have one more Super Bowl, right?
Right.
And so if you factor in that they took $110 million in corporate welfare and, what did we get for it? They left. That's a pretty obnoxious thing for the Spanos family to do. So let's keep that in mind as far as when we're talking about should you still be a fan, should you still root for them. They royally screwed this city. They literally thieved $110 million in money that we basically have nothing to show for it now because we don't have a team. So,
and what, the second worst stadium in the country? Right.
Behind the Raiders, of course. But, and let's talk about that stadium. They let the fan experience suffocate in the last couple years. They didn't do anything to improve the fan experience. The televisions at the queue and the board where you watch highlights is seriously would not even
from the 80s.
It's basically from the 80s.
I don't know when it actually went in, but
yeah, it's terrible. And you get a better view at your average sports bar, basically anywhere, and you get a better experience of rooting with other fans because at least you didn't have to pay $20 to park in the parking lot. Right.
On top of the $80, $90 ticket.
And it's really important to note that they suffocated the fan experience because they had many opportunities, including SDSU actually offered to go halvesies with them on a video board at one point. And the Chargers wouldn't even do that, which is a good deal. And listen, if they had gotten a new stadium in San Diego, they could have put in a new video board that they could have picked up and moved right to the new stadium, right?
Yep.
If they were smart but the fact of the matter is they wanted the fan experience to suck suck at the queue because one way or another, because they didn't want people to want them to stay in San Diego or they wanted the stadium to be so bad that they would have to get a new one. Either way, they did not give a shit about the fan experience. And look,
the fans in general, right?
Right. And they marketed the team awful. You would never have I know that San Diego is a transplant city, so you get fans from all over the place moving here. But there is no argument to say that San Diego was Chargers country. I grew up in Indiana, and when you go home, you're never going to find anything but Colts stuff at a sporting goods store for sale. Okay? This is just not going to happen. And when you go to frickin' fast food places, they have Colts bottles and cups and things. There's Colts shit everywhere in Indiana. And if you go to Wisconsin, there's Green Bay Packers shit all over the state. Free shit stuff that you can get. That one time I got a checkbook that was you'll get a cheaper checkbook if you get the Charger checkbook, right? At the Union Bank. And that happened to me one time that I had the team marketed to me through another business. And look, that's part of the fan experience. It's part of being a fan community is that you see Charger stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
But there wasn't Charger stuff everywhere. There's certain bars and places that, like Cali Comfort that's run by a serious Charger fan, but there was no marketing. There was hardly any marketing anywhere there was no billboards.
Right. If you wanted a fan experience, it was through other fans.
Right.
And not through the Chargers themselves.
And yeah, they did open practice, and you could go to open practice, and that was fun. But even that was, very tame compared to other fan bases. If you go to open practice for other teams, they, were passing out T-shirts, doing all kinds of things. The Chargers never did any of that stuff. They never marketed the team through billboards in the community. There were very few commercials on TV. There was very little attempt to rope in the community. And at least in the last couple years, because let's face it, they weren't going to spend the money when they knew they were going to leave. And
Which,
look,
how long did they know they were going to leave?
I think that they were.
Remember, this is our opinion.
Yeah, I believe that they were starting to lay the groundwork for leaving as early as the mid-aughts. The fact that they played a home game in London was specifically to kiss the NFL's ass. It was Dean trying to be a good soldier. They didn't want to lose a home game to play in London, but that was kissing the commissioner's ass. And, and that was Dean being a good soldier. I've heard that many times from people that he didn't want to do that, but he did that because it was Dean being a good soldier. And that was at a time when it was very hard to get teams to want to go play in London. But, this all comes down to, okay, maybe he didn't market because doesn't have a lot of money compared to most NFL owners. He just really is, he's a billionaire compared to you and me.
Right.
Like, he has more money than us, but compared to like Jerry Jones or Jeffrey Lurie or Robert Kraft, he's not rich compared to those guys.
But if you don't advertise and you don't merchandise and you don't do all the things that draw fans in,
well, look,
you're not going to make more money.
One of the best eras for the
fans, just skating by.
Right. Well, one of the best eras for fan experience for the Chargers was definitely during the LT years when Jim Steig was running the business for the team, and he did things right, and he got fired for it. And
how did that happen?
Well,
I don't know this story.
Well, he got fired, and a lot of people think it's because, well, there's a lot of rumors as to why, but it was clear that when Jim Steig was put on the Citizens Advisory Board for the stadium, that the Chargers were not stoked. And that's because I think Jim knew a lot of their, dirty laundry. He knew a lot of that stuff. Jim is a really cool guy. He doesn't live in San Diego anymore. But his wife was a sports reporter, and, Jim and Jill, Jill Steig, his wife, is not a huge Spanos family fan. And during the CARSON debacle, which we'll get to later, she was awesome, like uncovering stories. And, so I've heard a lot of theories as to why Jim Steig was fired, but, I think,
that was the Chargers' way, is just to fire anybody that's good at anything.
Right. Yeah. So they could go on and do something really great somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Yeah.
So Jim Steig getting fired is no different than Junior or Rodney Harrison
or Schottenheimer
or Eric Weddle. Right. Yeah. This is around the time. And look, this is mid-aughts, right?
Yeah.
So, when we can do conspiracy theories as to why Marty Schottenheimer got fired and why Jim Steig got fired, is they could have been doing too good of a job.
Right.
Oh, we'll never get out of San Diego if we continue to be this good and do this good a job. That's a conspiracy theory, but I think it's believable,
Well, they're not here anymore.
They're not here anymore. That's right. And so the lack of money as far as an ownership goes is the reason why Dean Spanos couldn't build his own stadium. Look, Dean has more money than me, right? So I'm not saying he's poor, but he doesn't have the kind of money that Stan Kroenke did, where Stan Kroenke could literally write a check. And that's why Dean's renting a frickin' stadium from Stan Kroenke now, because he didn't have the money to build his own. And in reality, that is another sign of why there are bad owners, why they were bad for San Diego, why they were bad for the Chargers, because in the end, being a slumlord doesn't make you the kind of money that being Robert Kraft does, or the gazillion businesses that Stan Kroenke owns, or being heir to the Walmart family money like Stan Kroenke is. I'm sorry, he owns a bunch of fucking shitty apartments in Stockton. That doesn't help you build a stadium. And Dean's obviously not smart enough to, a good, and look, this gets into he hired, when the Padres wanted to build Petco Park in downtown, they hired Lucchino, who was good at, building bridges and bringing communities together. And he created a situation where the community got behind Petco Park and made it happen. It wasn't super easy, but they made it happen. But what did Dean Spanos do? What did the rocket scientist Dean Spanos do? He hired Mark Fabiani Do you know what that motherfucker does for a job? That guy, his job is crisis management. When you want to build bridges and build a stadium, literally build something in a community, he hired a person who handled Bill Clinton's crisis when he got caught in the Whitewater scandal.
Right.
That's what Mark Fabiani was known for. So, yeah, there was a crisis because Dean had been ripping off the community for $110 million in corporate welfare. So, yeah, that could be looked at as a crisis. But if you want to build bridges with however many mayors he ended up trying to build a stadium, supposedly, with, you don't hire a guy whose job is crisis. You hire a guy who's good at politics and putting people together, not solving emergency crisis situations. PR problems. And that's what Mark Fabiani was. So Mark Fabiani was, by definition, by his job, never meant to actually accomplish his goal, because he's not the person you want to hire for that. So in the end, we all ended up hating Mark Fabiani to the point that when he spoke at the big NFL meeting at the Spreckles auditorium, and awesome job, Charger fans, you booed him so long that I had to personally get up and try to stop you from booing him so they could actually speak, as, you know, and the NFL.
As shitty of people as they are,
I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to stop you from booing Mark. And look, I've spent a lot of time talking on the phone with Mark, trading text messages with him through this situation. So, look, personally, one-to-one, Mark was always nice to me. But he was never the person for this job. He was never the person to build the stadium. He should never have been doing it. You know, and if you read his book, it's all about, fixing problems. And, you know, he didn't fix shit here. And look, the tone in LA...
It was all built for a transition to a different city, right?
Yeah. And look, Dean Spanos doesn't give a fuck about what you think as San Diego fans. And he proved that by teaming up with the Raiders. If he was going to team up with the Raiders to build a stadium, which, first of all, was just dog shit dumb.
How ridiculous is it?
It was the dumbest idea ever. They're in the same frickin' division.
Right.
They should not... They're NFL teams. It's okay if the Giants and Jets share a stadium because they're not even in the same conference. Right?
Yeah.
The Raiders and Chargers are fucking rivals in their own division. It was the dumbest idea possible for Dean to do that. And it shows that he has no fucking clue how his fans feel. No one was ever going to feel good about sharing a stadium
with the fucking Oakland Raiders.
Right. And in the end, let me tell you something. I can't prove this. I cannot prove this. But it was told to me by one of my contacts at the mayor's office that in the last couple meetings, one of the last meetings that Dean had with the mayor's office, just to tell you people how seriously Dean took this, he was literally sitting on his phone playing Candy Crush in a fucking meeting with the mayor. Okay?
Right.
Now, I can't prove that, but I don't know why somebody would
You got that information secondhand?
I got it firsthand from somebody who was in the meeting. And so I believe it. That's why I'm telling you that I believe it. I believe he was fucking playing Candy Crush when he was supposed to be trying to solve this situation.
And he never engaged with the public either.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to the campaign.
Yeah, all right.
He used to do and that's actually what tipped us off to Dean, to knowing that the team was really getting serious about moving, is because he did do one interview with Mighty 1090 every year, around mid-season, where he talked about the state of the Chargers.
Right.
I usually would go on with Darren Smith, right? Because I think Scott and BR were a little too tough on him. But for whatever reason, and I'm not putting you down, Darren, because you know I love you, Darren Smith. I definitely like your show. But for whatever reason, Dean did not go on the air after that 2014 season. He never did any radio interviews that year. And that was actually what made me worried and was actually led to us starting Save Our Bolts. But what does the CARSON vote say about how the NFL feels about Dean? Well, I'll tell you what. It's clear that the NFL did not think Dean Spanos was dumb enough to move the team from San Diego. Because
they were so wrong.
They were wrong. They had too much faith in Dean Spanos because I think the NFL looked at it and said he would be a fucking idiot to move. He has no fans in LA. There's already a team there. You know, he would not.
It's not even the second favorite team in LA.
Yeah, he would be becoming the 11th team in a market, giving up the 7th largest city in the country and being the number 1 team in the market. You know, and I know there's a lot of others. You know, it's hard when you live in San Diego City to think that the Chargers are number 1 because there's so many fans that transplant to the city. But if you're talking the county and you're talking San Diego County, that's where the majority of the Charger fans are. And he ruled this market. And, you know, so I think the NFL was like, no, he's not dumb enough to do this. So when Dean tried to get the vote for CARSON and the Raiders, I think he was obviously pissed he lost the vote. But it was clear from the vote that the only 2 people that fucking voted for it was him and fucking Mark Davis.
Right.
That the NFL did not trust Dean and Mark Davis with LA. They obviously trusted Stan Kroenke more with LA. And look, the Rams had the tradition.
Yeah.
So for the fact of the matter is that they didn't think the Chargers in LA was a good idea. That's why they voted it down. But they gave Dean an out by saying, listen, if you can't get it worked out in San Diego, we'll let you come up and join the Rams. But I don't think anyone really thought he would do that.
No, because, he just tanked the whole stadium deal.
And look, for those of us who know a lot about the Dean Stan situation, Dean gave Stan the idea for the property that he ended up being at. They had a meeting in a steakhouse in Beverly Hills like over a decade ago, and Dean said, hey, check out this site, and Stan went and bought it. Right out from Dean. That's why Dean was pissed. Dean did not like Stan because he took his idea and ran with it. So, and I think a lot of the NFL owners knew that, and they were probably thinking, there's no fucking way Dean's going to go be second fiddle to this guy who fucked him over. But they didn't realize just how
now Stan is his slumlord.
Yeah, I don't think they expected, you know, the son of a slumlord to rent from Stan. But because of their fractured relationship. But I don't think they realized like how seriously Dean had been burning bridges in San Diego. And I think Dean felt like he had to go. But we'll get to that. But that extra year, what it tells you is the NFL was basically telling Dean, go work it out.
Yeah,
go
figure it out.
Yeah, go figure it out. And look, I realize, and some of you who are haters for what we did with Save Our Bolts are still trying to be Charger fans and trying to convince yourself it's ethical to be a Charger fan from San Diego. You're saying to yourself, oh, you guys got used. Well, damn right we did.
Yep.
We tried to save the team, and yes, we were pawns. We got used, and we know it. We know fully that we got used for that year. But the level to which we got used says more about Dean's character and the character of the Spanos family and why you should not root for a team owned by that man, for the lack of a better word. You know, this tells you that year, basically what Dean was doing was trying to convince the NFL that he was trying, because the NFL probably sat Dean down. The commissioner probably said, Dean, go work it out.
Right.
Go work it out. Figure it out. Figure it out in San Diego. So Dean, in order to get to LA, his only chance was to prove to the NFL that he tried.
Right. Is that where Measure C comes in?
That's where Measure C was designed to fail, okay? Because he needed to prove to the NFL that he tried and failed. And because the only way he was going to get to LA was if he convinced the NFL, hey, I tried and I failed.
Right.
And that's exactly what Measure C was. It was designed to fail. Measure C...
It was a half-assed piece of shit, is what Measure C was.
Measure C was
no reason for anyone who wasn't a hardcore Chargers fan to vote for Measure C.
Right. And look, they still got 43%. Considering that it was designed to fail, 43% was actually Pretty good.
Pretty high.
Well, because let's look at all the different ways that Dean Spanos engineered the failure of Measure C. He engineered their move to LA by propping up Measure C to fail. Now, this is not... Look, this is very easy to prove. And I can prove it starting with this very first point, but I'm going to make 18 other points. But this first point is a huge thing. The Spanos family can point to major effort and hard work that they did to push Measure C. And they did until it was on the ballot. Because they needed to get a record amount of signatures in a short period of time in order to make the ballot in time to prove to the NFL that they tried to get a vote before they moved in a year. So in order to do that, they had to get a crazy amount of signatures to get on the ballot in the beginning. So yes, they worked their asses off to get on the ballot. And during the effort to get on the ballot, they held a rally downtown. And it was the biggest Charger event that had been held in the community outside of a game or an open practice that I ever know of. Basically, since the celebration, the impromptu celebration when the team won the AFC Championship after after they beat the Steelers.
Oh, yeah.
When all the fans went down to the queue and celebrated.
That was a great game.
Yeah. And it's probably since then. And so they had this rally downtown in the site where they wanted to build the stadium. And who was there? The NFL commissioner was there. LT was there. Philip Rivers was there. I'm not sure if Dan Fouts was there, but the fucking commissioner was there, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever see those guys ever again after we got the signatures?
Nope.
They never put on another rally after the signatures were gathered.
No, it was just
Not
that it got on the ballot and that's it.
There was times when Scott Kaplan and Billy Ray Smith on the Scott and BR show were talking to these people, Dan Fouts included, LT, and said, hey, when are you guys going to come out here and do this? And I remember very specifically LT saying, I haven't been asked.
Right.
Right? They literally did not ask. And when you say that they're phoning things in, just, because they eventually, what they said when they got closer is that, well, we had to focus on football. Well, what the fuck did that get you? 5 wins?
Right.
They had to focus on football? Well, they were so focused on football that they let Joey Bosa hold out for pennies.
Yep.
So he didn't make it at the beginning of the season. If they were so worried about getting the vote, you would have signed your number 1 draft pick, their number 3 draft pick, right? He was the number 3 pick in the draft.
Yep.
You would sign Joey Bosa as soon as you fucking could, and you would put him on the field, and you would win games, and you would do everything you could to win games, and they didn't. So don't give me this, they were focused on football crap. Because
they knew they were out.
They knew they were out, and once they got on the ballot, we never saw players at rallies again. And so when this focus on football thing, players have always on Tuesdays, which is their day off, signed up to do community events. They put a little piece of paper on the player's locker that says these community events are available. You can go christen a weight room at a gym. You can go, to this track or you can go give out food at this. They do that every Monday. So on Tuesdays, that on their day off, players can do that if they want. So any Tuesday during the campaign, they could have put on the flyer like, hey, campaign rally. Well, but there weren't any campaign rallies.
Nope.
So they didn't do it. And, that is all you need to know about Measure C failing and being designed to fail, is because you saw the effort they could have put towards it when they were trying to get signatures, and that effort just ended.
It just died out as soon as they got to that point.
As soon as they got what they needed to be on the ballot, because all that Dean Spanos worried about was getting on the ballot so he could lose. He wanted to lose the vote so he could go back to the NFL and say, I tried, I put this measure up, and it failed, and now I got to go to LA. Now look, there's one other thing too, is that it was a city-only vote. And I defended the city-only vote for a long time because there's a lot more conservative voters in the county. So there is an argument to be made that a city-only vote would have been better.
Right.
Except for the majority of the Charger fans are in the county.
Yeah.
And the problem is that if you, and I worked the Measure C booth at games at the Q, right? And what would happen is every single time I would hand out information saying, hey, vote for Measure C, people would say, oh, I'd love to, but I live in the county.
Yeah.
You know, like over and over and over and over again. And, you know, so I would say, hey, that's awesome, but I'm sorry you live in the county, get 5 people in the city that you know to vote for it, and maybe that's how we got to 43%. But, so consider that, like, there's the political distrust. Remember the $110 million in corporate welfare. The community of voters know about that. And if you're not a sports fan and you know that this family took $110 million of corporate welfare, it's going to be hard to vote yes, for more corporate welfare to build a stadium.
Right. Nobody wanted to shell out money for a new stadium
And
for a team that had already taken so much from the community.
And suffocating the fan support at the same time by not, like, if they were in the community more, and yes, they did community things like the blood drive, which was great, and they did, like, a few things like that, but compared to other teams, they did very little. And if there were Charger cups at every, you know, Del Taco,
right,
you know, or whatever, there would be more
That's
of a
the way it used to be. I remember getting cups at like Round Table and stuff,
right.
Charger cups.
And that, it sounds like a stupid little thing, but that's what makes it your team, your community, right? You see that stuff everywhere, and that just wasn't happening. But keep in mind, too, that the threshold for this vote, in order to get this passed, you needed, because it's a raising of taxes, even though it wouldn't have been from the citizens directly, it would have been from tourists, you still needed a 2/3 threshold in the vote. And the team knew that. And the team knew that that was next to impossible to get. Which, well,
there were other avenues, weren't there, other than Measure C that could have been
Well, they could have tried
taken?
They could have tried to build a stadium in Mission Valley for much cheaper, but they chose downtown.
They insisted on it.
They insisted on downtown, which was the harder plan. And they said at the time, this because we can make more money downtown, right? And look, there is a strong argument for why you would want to put it downtown. And believe me, I defended that for a long time. But that's a harder plan, and that's a harder sell, which adds to the...
And costs way more money.
Trying to fail. And look, after the election, conveniently after we lost at 43%, Dean Spanos then told the media, well, if we got 50%, I would have stayed.
Right.
If we got 50% in the vote, we would have stayed and fought. Bullshit.
And if a frog had wings, it wouldn't bump his ass when it hopped.
Well, how about you tell the voters beforehand that they only need to vote? I think more people would have voted yes if there's like, listen, it's not going to pass, but if I can get it to 50% and they're going to stay.
We're going to stay.
We probably could have gotten 7% more in the vote, don't you think?
Definitely.
Now, let's talk about that 7% because that's really important. If we had players coming out to rallies and doing big community events with jumbotrons downtown and everything, and the players were coming out every week, do you think we would have gotten 7% more? I think so.
I think that's possible.
Yeah, because we're only talking about 7% difference. If Dean had done more interviews in the media explaining himself, do you think we would have gotten 7% more?
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, I was at a community meeting in East Village where when this was during the signature gathering, of course, during the signature gathering, Dean went to this community meeting and shook hands with people in the community, telling them why the stadium would be important, why he wouldn't screw over their neighborhood, why they'd be good neighbors, and all that stuff. And it really convinced some of the people that were there. If Dean had done that even 5 or 6 more times, we would have made 7% up, but he didn't. He didn't do any of that shit after he got the signatures because he didn't want to succeed. He wanted to fail. And that is another reason why, how can you support this guy? How can you root for his team?
Right.
Look.
Scumbag.
There was a lack of volunteers. The only volunteers that were out knocking on doors were by the trade unions. And yes, Dean did come to some of those events, But let me tell you something. Save Our Bolts was ready to raise an army to go volunteer door to door. And we asked for many, many times to have the volunteers trained. We had one training, one time, with very short notice, so we couldn't get as many people as we wanted. So do you think if we had more volunteers, we could make up 7% of the vote? I think so.
Yeah.
These are all ways we could have, because if he was not lying about the 50%, we could have made up that 7% with just the barest minimal effort. But we didn't get that. So, Measure C failed. We only got 43%. And he made the decision. After we got that, they came, they had us, they honored us on the field. And I believed there's no way he's going to honor us on the field and then rip the team out of our community.
And then still leave, yeah.
Well, boy, I was wrong. And you went with me, Larry, to that game, the Tampa Bay Bucks game when they honored us on the field. And, so listen, I've looked at this guy in, face to face. I've talked to Dean. I've shook his hand. I've been in meetings with him a couple times. And let me tell you, you really want to wash your hands afterwards. This dude is slick, right? But he's just not, you just look at this and you just look at these decisions. They're just not clever. So let's talk about the very not clever decision of making the actual decision, the decision to leave.
Bum, bum, bum.
This happened right after a meeting in New York City where the NFL met, the relocation committee met, and they didn't even plan to talk about the Chargers. And I think that's really crucial to this story, is they were basically going to talk about the Raiders. That's all they were going to talk about that day in New York. And I think Dean
so they just, what? They just slipped it in somewhere?
No. What happened was Dean wanted to talk about, like, hey, what are we going to do after this decision or after this vote? And they were like, well, I think the NFL was like, dude, we're not talking about you guys because you're going to work it out in San Diego. It's all going to be good. You're going to figure it out.
Right.
And so we need to talk about the Raiders going to Las Vegas. Well, as soon as they start making these decisions about hey, the Raiders are going to go to Vegas. I mean, they didn't actually make the decision till later, but there was some kind of procedure. There was some groundwork, some procedural stuff. But I think Dean was so pissed that they didn't even want to talk to him about moving that he leaked the story to Adam Schefter that day, hey, a decision's coming tomorrow.
Really?
And if you remember, what happened was Adam Schefter tweeted out, hey, a decision's coming tomorrow.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Right. And so they leaked it to Adam Schefter, right? And what I believe was happening, now I can't prove this, this is all conspiracy and conjecture, but my belief is that one of the reasons why they did not want to talk to Dean about anything about him moving to LA is I believe Jerry Jones, who's very good friends with Stan Kroenke, took Dean aside in New York City and said, don't worry about it, Dino, we'll make you whole. Because if you remember, the reason why they could not do a backup plan in Mission Valley was there was a $250 million gap between what the Chargers needed and what the city was willing to offer. So there was a $250 million gap. Well, that's nothing to Jerry Jones and most of the NFL owners. So I believe, I can't prove this, but I believe what happened in New York City was Jerry Jones took Dino aside, patted him on the shoulder, and said, don't worry, Dino, we'll make you whole. You don't have to leave San Diego. Right? So fucker panics. Because he's like, wait, I just spent this whole year trying to convince them that I needed to go to LA, and now they're going to fucking make me whole? Yeah. They're gonna solve this?
Can't have that.
Can't have that, right? So he calls Adam Schefter, tells him a decision's coming. You can tell by the way the decision came down that the NFL was not prepared for this.
Yeah.
They were not ready. In fact, at the first press conference in LA, when the commissioner showed up, he said something about, we're really excited to see Stan's vision come to fruition at Dino's fucking press conference, right? I don't think the NFL was prepared for this at all. I think they just thought Dean, and I think Dean just out of, like freaking out, like, holy shit, they're going to make me go back to San Diego. And he's burned all these bridges and he's done all these things in San Diego. He's become a villain in San Diego. He
might as well have been twirling his mustache.
Right. So he just needed to get out. And what's my proof in that? Look how shitty the statement was that he made. It was so unthought out. And then they put that stupid logo out that looked like the Dodgers logo.
Oh.
Right? And
yeah, social media loved that.
That whole first week was such a clusterfuck of bad decisions and like lack of planning. And look, there was no plan for LA. They had a bunch of coaches. Mike Smith, the former Atlanta Falcons coach and Bucks coach, had interviewed for the job. A lot of people believe he was this close to getting hired by the Chargers, and he pulled his hat out of the ring, right? Because I don't think he wanted to.
No, he didn't want a nightmare team.
He didn't want a nightmare team in a new city with no fans. And then,
no stadium.
And Matt Patricia pulled his hat out, the Patriots defensive coordinator. And so they ended up hiring Anthony Lynn. And look, all respect to Anthony Lynn. I have no problems with him. I mean, I love that in his first press conference, he still called the team the San Diego
Chargers. I remember that.
Right. I mean, you can't blame him because they were still practicing in San Diego at the time. But Anthony Lynn was their 8th choice. It's clear and obvious. No matter if he does a good job, and he's done a better job than I expected, right?
Mm-hmm. With what he has,
With what he has. So I'll respect Anthony Lynn, but he was the only offensive coach they interviewed. They interviewed all defensive coaches. And I think that the football brain trust there was trying to get a defensive coach. And I think at the last minute, because they announced this move to LA, they're just like, fucking hire a coach. I don't care. Just fucking hire a coach. We need a fucking coach.
Right.
Right? And, so you have the logo, you have the Fisher-Price Stadium that they're playing in, basically, which, like for the Galaxy, it's a great stadium.
Yeah.
But for football, for an NFL, that they're going to have.
It's not even close to an NFL stadium.
Yeah, it's 1/3 of, you have the whole, they hired fans. They had so-called fans at their Welcome to LA rally that still had price tags hanging out of the sleeve.
Their jerseys,
with these brand new Lance Allworth jerseys with price tags hanging out of them. So it was obvious they hired fans. Now, there's a couple of you out there, you know who you are, my old friends, who drove all the way up from San Diego to go. And shame on you for doing that, because what you did is you justified the move because you're one of the few people who, gave Dean, credit for the move, and I'm still going to be a Charger fan. But there was one fan who went up there.
That guy was awesome.
Yes, Joseph, the sign guy. Shout out to Joseph. I'm sure you're listening. Joseph, you rule. Who went up there, gave Dean the bird, and it just added to the whole atmosphere of what a fucking circus and clusterfuck that first week was.
Right.
Let's not forget when they sent Jeff Cumberland, who's a permanently injured tight end who played for the team for one series in the preseason, to a Clipper game. Way to go, PR department. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And he got booed.
Yep.
Yeah, he got booed. I mean, seriously. This is all part of... This is the worst move by a major sports franchise in the history of sports.
Well,
seriously.
I mean, Browns in the middle of the night is kind of bad.
Oh, no, it was Colts in the middle of the night.
No, I thought it was the Browns.
No, it was the Colts in the middle of the night.
Oh.
It was the Colts from Baltimore to Indianapolis. But let me tell you something. That was a shitty move towards Baltimore, but Indianapolis welcomed them like they were the best thing ever. But never has an NFL team moved to another city and been treated and ignored, except for the people who booed at a Clipper game. This is the worst move. It may not be the meanest, right?
Yeah.
But it's pretty bad because the Chargers may not have moved out overnight, right? But they did worse. They did not even mention San Diego in their statement.
Nope.
Right? They had fans coming out burning jerseys because of that
on their memorabilia
on their doorstep. And then they stayed in San Diego for 2 freaking months.
Yeah.
Practicing here. Well,
get out.
Yeah.
Just get out.
Get the fuck out of here. If you're going to leave, leave. But don't just, like, hang around and look, it's not just up the road.
We broke up. Stop using my shit. Give me back my t-shirt.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out.
You people who stayed fans, you're like, somebody, your girlfriend cheats on you, leaves you, and you're like, it's okay. It's okay. They screwed us over for money. They ruined our fan experience. And what? And you're going to follow them?
Right.
And you're going to make it okay for them? Do you think Baltimore fans, like, would ever have gone and rooted for the Colts in Indianapolis? Hell no. Do you think Cleveland fans are going to go to Baltimore and root for them?
No.
No. Of course not. And look, you can say you guys are just bitter, right?
And we are bitter.
We are bitter. You're damn right we're bitter. This is 56 years of tradition taken from a family, just stolen from a family from Stockton,
right,
who came and took a San Diego tradition. Yeah, they kept it here for a couple years.
Well, they also shit all over it every chance they got. They shit all over it.
In the meantime, when they were here, they did a terrible job of managing it, and then they take it to another city. And that's after taking $110 million in corporate welfare. Right. So the Spanos family are not only actual thieves, but they're also identity thieves. They stole the identity of a city and took it to a city that doesn't even give a shit about them. They stole the identity in the heart of a community and took it to a city that does not give a shit. They don't
care at all.
In LA, and they never will. Look, they've got the Rams. The Rams had a tradition and a history. They don't need the Chargers. They don't need it. So the Chargers...
Or want it.
Yeah, without tradition in LA, they're always going to be a homeless NFL team. Because their home is San Diego. And when they're playing in LA, they're always going to be homeless. Every game, 16 away games a year. Always. Yep. And that's not to say that we didn't have that experience down here. But remember, that didn't happen during the LT years. Right?
Yeah, when the team was really good.
There were no takeovers of the stadium.
Yeah.
There were takeovers of the stadium after the Spanos family had been intentionally suffocating the fan experience because they didn't give a shit because the tickets were selling. They didn't care if they sold to other people. They knew it looked good. It actually worked in the Spanos family's favor to have other fans at the games.
Yeah.
But now they're so desperate. If you want to talk about like more shitty management and why you should not support a team in LA run by the Spanos family, they're actually marketing to other teams' fans now because they're desperate to fill a 1/3 the size stadium of what they're eventually
going. They still can't fill it.
Right. And so you think when they get into Kroenke land, they're going to be able to sell that out? Hell no.
Nope.
This is going to be an even worse disaster. And you know what's going to end up happening? All you people from San Diego that say, "Oh, I'm a Charger fan. It's not about San Diego. It's about the Chargers. Or I root for the players." Blah 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 blah. Well, when they can't sell out Kroenke land, one or two things is going to happen. Spanos is going to become so broke over the situation that he's going to have to sell the team.
Yep.
Or he's going to have to move him to fucking San Antonio. Right?
Oh, man.
And you want to talk about, like, oh, it's only an hour up the road. It's still Southern California. Are you still going to be a fan when they move to San Antonio? Because they're probably going to rebrand. And at some point, they're probably going to change the name of the team because they're going to see, like, it's not working. Because people in LA still see the Chargers as San Diego's team. They don't want San Diego's team. They don't give a shit about San Diego's team. They don't care. So here's the thing. Like, when Spanos... Like, because he's not going to sell personal seat license in that new stadium. And he tries to present himself as a full partner with Stan Kroenke. Everybody knows better. That's fucking bullshit. And now they're lying and saying that they're still doing the community programs in San Diego. The Blood Drive, the LT 5K. It's now called the Legends 5K because LT, his name is so tarnished in San Diego, he can't even run a fucking 5K marathon down here.
Yeah, and what they did with LT's induction ceremony.
When they did nothing down here.
Yeah, it was just such crap.
And the thing is, LT was a hero down here. Nick Hardwick was a hero down here.
Yep.
And when these two former players hitched their wagons to Dean Spanos, what did it do? Dean Spanos shit on their legacy just like he shat on everything else.
Right.
Dean Spanos ruined the name of LT in a city that fucking loved him. We loved him down here. We loved Nick Hardwick, and he ruined their legacy to the point where Nick Hardwick, I don't know if you know this, Larry, but he just quit.
Oh, yeah?
The Chargers broadcast just a couple days ago when we're recording this.
Good for him.
Well, I don't know that he did it out of like love for San Diego, other than that the stress of everybody hating on him was probably too much.
Too much.
And because anytime Nick Hardwick could seriously like post like, oh, look at this awesome watermelon I got at Sprouts. And seriously, like ex-Charger fans will like berate him about like, you fucking traitor, you know. And look, I don't have a problem with Nick Hardwick personally. I like
the guy's got to work too.
Yeah, I like Nick, and I didn't actually get that mad at him. But if he's like posting workout videos and people are like, die, you fucking traitor, he's gonna get sick of that shit. Right?
Right.
And look, like, he gets treated like Star Wars, like the disgruntled, like, man baby Star Wars fans treat Rian Johnson. And it's not fair. But, like, you know, this is what Dean Spanos does. He shits all over everything that he touches. And look, you can say that, oh, I don't root for Dean Spanos. And this is the thing I hear all the time. I don't root for Dean Spanos. I root for the players. Well, horseshit. Okay? Because if you're rooting for the Chargers, you're rooting for Dean Spanos. If you're trying to help Dean Spanos and cheering like the team on, you're helping Dean Spanos and you're helping the move.
Yeah, if you're wearing an LA Chargers jersey, if such a thing exists.
Yeah, you're supporting the move.
You're advertising the team.
You're helping normalize the identity theft from our city. And if you say you're rooting for the players come and go. Look how Dean treats the players. If you're rooting for the players, do you continue to root for LT when he goes to the Jets? Do you continue to root for Eric Weddle because he's in Baltimore? Do you continue to root?
Right.
You know, look how they treated Rodney Harrison Jr., LT, Gates. They don't give a shit about the players. You may, but they don't. And the players come and go. And all those names that I just mentioned, Rodney Harrison Jr., LT, all those players come and go, and they're gone. Whatever player, if Phillip Rivers is going to be gone in a couple years, who's still going to be there? The Spanos family.
The
Spanos assholes are still going to be there. Now, there would be a reason to continue to root for the team with Spanos being there if they were still in San Diego. But they're not.
Right.
So guess what, San Diego fans? You're free. They've released you. It's like the curse has been lifted. You don't have to root for a Spanos product. You don't have to suffer through the fourth quarter collapses. You don't have to suffer through the players holding out. You don't have to suffer through the shitty management anymore.
The mountain of bullshit.
I'd say it's LA's problem, but they don't give a shit either. So, like, you know, here's your chance. Let me tell you something. After having had a year off now of not having to be tied to a Spanos product, it feels pretty nice on Sundays. Because I can just watch the NFL casually. I don't like the people that have gone and picked another team because to me, I'm still a San Diego Charger fan.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, my buddy Rob, God bless him, was a Raider fan for a little while. Now he's a Chiefs fan. I don't get that. I'm not going to.
I can't do that.
I can't do that. I'm not going to root for another team, and I don't like the team bandwagon jumping. That's not my thing. But you don't have to have a team. You can still watch the NFL and enjoy football. And in fact, it's more fun when you're not like having the shit kicked out of you emotionally by a shitty team.
Right.
So you have the chance
by a team that lets you down every fucking time
to move on. And we're almost done, I swear. But you know, look, if you continue to buy jerseys, buy tickets. Like, look, it'd be one thing, like, I know some people have said that they'll only go to away games, and I can respect that. If you're going to stay a Chargers fan, just don't go to Carson. Don't buy tickets there. You know, go to see them in Houston, or go to see them at the Coliseum, or, you know, just go anywhere, right? That would be better. That would be better. I
guess that's better, but it's still...
You don't want to support this family with your money. You don't want to buy the jerseys. You don't want to buy the tickets. You don't want to buy the concessions. You don't want them to make any money off of you. Look at what they did to this. They still owe us $110 million in corporate welfare for nothing.
Yeah.
So don't support this team. And look, Dean thinks you're dumb. He thinks you fans are dumb. He thinks that all he has to do is show up with a stupid fucking riff on the Dodgers logo to LA, take a fucking selfie with the fucking Kings mascot and like,
Right.
and then
boom, LA is theirs.
Yeah, he's Mr. LA. So if you're an LA fan, like, why the fuck would you want anything to do with this ownership? Why would you want to hitch yourself to that? You can hitch yourself to the Rams, and you can see already they've turned things around. I'm not saying the Rams are the best run organization, and I know people who are fans of Stan Kroenke's like soccer teams and basketball, his basketball team, like the Nuggets, they're not big fans of Stan Kroenke as an owner either, right? But Stan is investing a shit ton of money into LA right now. He does not want that product to be bad, right?
Right.
Whereas Dean, he's not putting a lot of money into it. And
or
even
really any.
And even if Dean wanted the team to be good, like if he was working really hard to make the team good, he ain't got it in him.
Nope.
Like, he has not got it in him to make, he is not a good owner. You will never have the kind of success the Patriots or the Packers have. You never will have it if you stay a Chargers fan or if you become a Chargers fan. You just will never have it. And look, if they're not in San Diego anymore, we have no reason to feel any loyalty. So fuck them. You just be done. Be done. Get away. Run. You don't want to be a Chargers fan. Listen, without the tradition here in San Diego, it's meaningless.
Yep.
This cheap and trust me, LA, he's never gonna spend the money to make that team good. Even when he's fighting for PSLs and whatever. There was a story LT told, and it's funny that he works for the team now, but shortly after he left the Chargers, he talked about he was amazed at all the different resources the frickin' Jets had compared to the Chargers.
Right.
Like chefs and, all these things that and personal assistants that came and worked him out. Shit he had to pay for on his own when he was a Charger, right?
Yeah.
But the Jets provided that. And it's not like the Jets are the fucking cream of the NFL crop. But they're fucking better run than the Chargers. And they always will be. So, to sum it up.
Yeah, sum it up.
All right. Listen, there's no reason to support this family. They are bad news. They fucked over San Diego. They'll never provide a good product in LA. And in a couple years, when they realize that they've completely failed, they will move somewhere else. I bet they will either, because Dean can't bring the team back here, so he's probably going to sell. And perhaps the new owner, being smart, will see that coming back to San Diego is a win-win. It'll be smart move. But if that doesn't happen, San Antonio is a pretty smart move, or St. Louis. So you could have the team end up in St. Louis or San Antonio in a heartbeat. And so all you people who are like, want to stick with the Chargers. I get it, dude. I get it. You out there who's still a Charger fan who's just shaking your head at me. I understand. Your identity is really tied to the Chargers. Mine was too. I wore Charger gear several days a week. Yeah. Being a Charger fan was a huge part of my identity in the last couple of years. And I get it. It's hard to separate. It's hard. But this team hates you and fucked over your city. They don't care about you. And you need to cut the ties. You cannot support them. And it's pathetic, honestly, for people from San Diego to continue to support this team. And when they move to St. Louis or San Antonio or
wherever,
or sell the team, then how you going to feel? When they rebrand because the Chargers thing, it just ain't working in LA, and they change their name to the LA Express or whatever. I know that was the USFL team, but whatever. Whatever they change their name to. It doesn't matter. Whatever they change their name to, how are you going to feel then? The fact of the matter is the San Diego Chargers do not exist anymore. And that is the only Chargers team that matters, is the San Diego Chargers. The LA Chargers are a fucking abomination, and you should have nothing to do with it. Larry, closing words?
This has been a public service announcement.
Fuck Dean Spanos. And fuck the Chargers.
There you go.
Winslow's touchdown helped the Chargers retake the lead, but his biggest impact came late in the fourth quarter.
The snap high, it's down, he kicked it, it is blocked. Great effort by Winslow.